began with just one park in 1872.
Nature had endowed Yellowstone with a strange, savage beauty.
But since then, the United States National Park System has grown tremendously. 400 areas now, covering 84 million acres across all 50 states. An incredible success story, often called America's greatest idea. But how did it all come about? Find out in a brief history of the National Park System. The concept of a national park is largely credited to George Catlin, an American painter who in 1832 traveled across the Great Plains to document disappearing Native American tribes. By some great protecting policy of government, Catlin argued for, a magnificent park, a nation's park containing man and beast, in all the wildness and freshness of their nature's beauty. A few decades later, in 1872, Catlin's dream came true when a natural wonderland spanning Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho became the world's first official national park. They called it Yellowstone.
Here is one of the most unspoiled regions on Earth. But visitors must be prepared for roadblocks like 500-pound bears. We'll just keep the car windows rolled up. Thank you.
Further west in California's Yosemite Valley, a controversy was brewing. While the area had been deeded to the state in 1864, with portions belonging to the federal government, the naturalist John Muir believed the state-managed areas were being exploited and lobbied Congress for it to become a national park under full federal control. In 1903, Muir convinced President Theodore Roosevelt to join him on a camping trip in Yosemite. And 3 years later, the park was under full federal control. By 1906, Congress helped expand the park system by passing the Antiquities Act, which granted the president the authority to set aside historic landmarks that already existed on public lands. Roosevelt took swift action, proclaiming Wyoming's Devil's Tower as the first national monument that year, and establishing a tradition that would continue today. For more than 40 years, the nation's parks were supervised at different times by the Departments of War, Agriculture, and the Interior. But President Woodrow Wilson sought to clear the bureaucratic mess and created the National Park Service on August 25, 1916. Then by 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt further streamlined the agency with Executive Order 6166. It consolidated all the national parks, monuments, memorials, and cemeteries into a single national park system. 3 decades later, President Johnson ushered in a new era of America's conservation, emphasizing a parks for the people ideology that sought more publicly accessible parks in urban areas.
This is a very happy and historic occasion for all who love the great American outdoors.
And since then, the list of national parks has grown steadily. California has the most national parks with 9, while Alaska's Wrangell St. Elias National Park is by far the largest. Can you even imagine America without its national parks? From the rivers of grass in the Everglades to the volcanoes of Hawaii, this unique system reflects how far Americans have come in their appreciation for the natural world.
The National Park Service is a bureau within the United States Department of Interior, established in 1916. Its mission is to preserve and protect the natural and cultural resources of the United States, while providing enjoyable and educational experiences for visitors. As stewards of the National Park System, which encompasses over 400 units, the NPS is responsible for conserving diverse ecosystems, wildlife habitats, historical sites, and cultural landscapes. They conduct scientific research, monitor and manage resources, and mitigate human impacts to ensure sustainability. Additionally, the NPS offers visitors services such as interpretive programs, guided tours, and recreational activities, while fostering partnerships with federal, state, tribal, and local entities to fulfill their mission effectively. The National Park Service has the management and responsibility of over 400 parks throughout the United States as a part of the National Park System. This extensive network of parks include national parks, national monuments, national historic sites, national recreation areas, national seashores, and various other designations. The NPS manages these parks by implementing a comprehensive framework of conservation, preservation, and visitor services. They work to protect and preserve the natural and cultural resources within each park, ensuring their long-term sustainability and safeguarding them for the future generations. This involves activities such as monitoring ecosystems, managing wildlife populations, preserving historical sites and artifacts, and mitigate human impacts like pollution and climate change. In addition to resource management, the NPS is dedicated to providing enjoyable and educational experiences for visitors. They offer a wide range of visitor services and facilities, including interpretive programs, guided tours, visitor centers, campgrounds, trails, and recreational activities. The NPS also strives to strike a balance between providing access and enjoyment for visitors while ensuring the protection and preservation of park resources. The national park also operates under the jurisdiction of the federal government, specifically within the United States Department of Interior. As a federal agency, the NPS is subject to laws, regulations, and policies set by the government. The NPS receives its funding through the annual federal budget process, which is determined by U.S. Congress. The agency submits its budget request to Congress, outlining its financial needs for various programs, projects, and operations. The funding allocated to the NPS is determined through the appropriations process, in which Congress reviews and approves the federal budget. The next main topic is the general park operations and how they benefit society and U.S. citizens. People visit national parks for various reasons, including recreation, education, and scientific research. National parks offer opportunities for outdoor activities such as hiking, camping, wildlife viewing, and photography, allowing visitors to immerse themselves in nature and enjoy recreational pursuits. These parks also serve as living classrooms, providing educational experiences through interpretive programs, guided tours, and exhibits that highlight the natural and cultural history of areas. Additionally, national parks often attract researchers who study diverse ecosystems, conduct scientific studies, and gather data to better understand and preserve these unique environments. Whether seeking adventure, knowledge, or scientific exploration, national parks offer a rich and rewarding experience for all visitors. The National Park Service positively benefits local economies through tourist attractions, revenue generation, and job creation. National parks draw millions of visitors each year, stimulating the tourist industry and supporting local businesses such as hotels, restaurants, shops, and tour operations. Visitors spending generates revenue, boosting the local economy and supporting community development. Additionally, the NPS directly employs a diverse workforce within park units, providing job opportunities and contributing to the economic vitality of surrounding communities. Overall, the NPS plays a significant role in fostering economic growth and prosperity in the areas where national parks are located. As someone who loves the national parks and loves to visit them, I think it is very important to understand maybe why other people enjoy them. I think that's why we're going to take the time to do a short questionnaire with someone who's a national park lover. Excuse me, sir, what is your name?
Brian Monroe.
What is your favorite national park and why?
My favorite national park is Yellowstone National Park. And the reason why is because it's got so much there and so many animals.
To talk about a specific park, I think it is important that we talk about Glacier Bay, as our main interviewee works at Glacier Bay. Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska has had a significant positive impact on the state's economy and its citizens. The park attracts tourists from around the world, drawn by its stunning natural landscapes, glaciers, and diverse wildlife. This influx of visitors boosts tourism-related business, such as hotels, restaurants, tour operations, and transportation services, which contribute to the local economy and provide job opportunities for Alaskans. Additionally, Glacier Bay National Park has facilitated scientific research and environmental studies, contributing to the understanding and conservation of the area's unique ecosystem. The park's ecological significance and pristine beauty also draws visitors who seek educational experiences and adventure, further benefiting the local economy. And I'm here with...
I'm Joseph Whalen.
And what is your current occupation?
So I'm a supervisory park ranger with the National Park Service, and the location I work at is Glacier Bay National Park, which is located in southeast Alaska. It's actually Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve, which is the ancestral homeland to the Hoona Tlingit.
Nice. All right. So what made you choose to go into the National Park Service?
It's kind of like a long answer. It's sort of accidental. I don't know. I couldn't find any jobs that I thought were very interesting. And so summers during college, I was able to work at Wolf Trap National Park for the performing arts. So it was a good job as a college person, and you could watch concerts. So I thought that was pretty cool. I went to Peace Corps, came back, and I was looking for work. And it was during a recession, and I was really struggling, and I wasn't finding any jobs. And then a job randomly opened up in Alaska, Glacier Bay, and I kind of like applied on a whim, and they called me, and
It's great.
I just showed up.
And have you had any like interesting experiences, being in Alaska or at work, the coolest thing you've been able to see like at the parks?
Yeah, so I started out in Alaska, and then I moved around, and then to a lot of different parks, and it'd be hard to pinpoint any single experience. I mean, so in the Everglades, in the Everglades, we were like flying in helicopters above the Everglades doing water quality samples. So helicopters would land on the water, and we'd get out, and then we'd collect water quality samples. And I've also been like cross-trained as a firefighter, so sort of like being in an airboat where you're doing a prescribed burn and you're just surrounded by a whole bunch of fire is pretty incredible.
Awesome.
And Alaska, to be in front of a massive glacier and have whales like all around you, or to be kayaking and then or have like a bear mess with your things. It's not an ideal situation, but I mean,
do you have a favorite national park other besides Glacier Bay? Has that been your number one?
There's like I separate national parks into, I probably look at them different than most visitors do. Like, I don't see a national park and I'm like, oh, like that's a cool national park. I see sort of like, would I want to live there?
Yeah.
So I don't just look at the park. I kind of look at the community near the park, or sort of what it would be like I like to recreate. Like, would there be good mountain biking nearby, or what could I do on my free time? So I guess I look at parks a little more like a home, a potential home, as opposed to like a place to visit and then be done with.
Yeah.
So every single place I've worked has been, and I'm not just saying this, like there are definitely pros and cons to them, and like they're each really special.
Yeah.
I might not want to like live there for the rest of my career, but I think I was the most surprised by living at Great Basin National Park in Nevada, because I had very little expectations. When you go to Alaska, everyone's like,
so beautiful.
There's like what you expect. Oh, I'm going to be like riding orca or whatever.
And then Nevada's the middle of the desert.
Nevada, everyone's just kind of like, oh, you're going to Nevada, to feel bad for you. But it was such a cool place. I had like the darkest night skies in the entire country. It was actually super mountainous, and you could be incredibly remote. It was a town of 50 people.
Oh, wow.
That one took me the most by surprise, but there's parks that sort of like haven't worked at but showed up to, and I just didn't realize they were going to be as cool. Like Capitol Reef, I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
I think every park for me that I've visited or that I've lived at has a lot of specialness to it. It's hard to pick just one.
All right. So what impact do you think the national parks as like a whole across the U.S. like have on the United States? Do you think it helps the United States overall?
So I think it fulfills an ideological role in the sense that, so I think it was like in 1890 that the census declared that there was no more frontier.
Mm-hmm.
I think the frontier and having space to explore and challenge yourself is very important to the American psyche.
Yeah.
I also think psychologically for us as humans, like we need space. We need to be able to connect to the natural environment. I mean, there's limitations to a park because it has, like you put these boundaries on the ground, but nothing really stops at those boundaries, like air pollution or wildlife don't stop. But I think if we lost all of our open space, we would fully cease to become what we tell ourselves that we are as Americans.
Yeah.
So I I think it's really important to have these spaces. Also, for me, like, not as a park ranger from a religious standpoint, I think that open spaces are important.
Have the free will.
Well, like, I just remember in college taking this class on, like, the Old Testament, and there was something about, like, every time God came to somebody, they were in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, I don't know what happens when you lose wilderness. I think and a lot of people do go into the national parks or the wilderness, and they have these religious experiences, and I don't think that's accidental. In lots of societies, they don't see themselves as separate from the natural world, like the Tlingit, who that's their home, the Glacier Bay is their homeland. Like, it's not kind of like, oh, that's like they're part of that system.
Yeah.
Like, they don't see themselves as like, you know, separate from Glacier Bay. Glacier Bay is them as well.
Yeah.
They're part of that process. And so, I mean, depending upon the individual too, like for the Huna Tlingit, their homeland, if they lost their homeland, that'd be super important, right?
100%.
But for the average, you know, neighbor, you know, if you ask them what Glacier Bay means to them, they'd be like, Glacier
it's
what?
Not the same.
Like,
yeah.
you mean the toilet bowl company?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it depends upon who you ask, but I think that, you know, we have a limited space as a country, even though we're a big country, and we've at least set aside some places that we can sort of give ourselves the hope that, you know, we can still, I don't know, have these experiences and challenge ourselves and maintain some semblance of the world around us.
Yeah, I agree. And one last question is, do you have any advice to someone who would want to become a park ranger? Or, like, where do you think they should start? Or
Yeah. I don't know. My joke is don't. Just, and the reason I say that is, like, because I'm in a position where I do hiring. So I would hire people to become a park ranger. And so, like, right now, what I was working on before you showed up is, you know, we have, you know, some jobs that open. We have about 8 jobs that open and 80 applicants. So that's kind of a lot. So I need to go through 80 resumes. But, you know, everybody wants to work for the national parks, which is good. And you need that. But I think more than that, you need people that advocate for wilderness, that advocate for national parks, and advocate for the environment that aren't park rangers. And you need them not in national parks, because national parks are already, for the most part, protected. Like, people are going to fall on their sword to make sure that nothing happens to Glacier Bay or the Everglades. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are going to fight when anything happens. But sort of like the average backyard park, you know, like Waverly down here, you know, if, you know, someone wanted to develop that and, you know, an entire community got behind it and said, no, this is an important place for us. And it might be small, but, like, you know, we like to see the foxes every once in a while. And, like, it's a bird habitat because birds migrate through here. I think national parks are really easy to get excited about because they're big and they're beautiful. But I think the things that are the biggest differences we can make sometimes happen outside national parks. And I think that hopefully national parks are places that people come to and maybe hopefully take away from that everything's important, not just this one place that, you know, has a sign before you enter.
And apply.
But when it comes to being a national park ranger, if you really did want to become a national park ranger, first of all, there's a lot of different types you could be. You could be law enforcement. You could be interpretation, which is more like a naturalist education. I'm kind of in the backcountry wilderness division. There's scientists. I think I would say pick a place you like that you're really interested in and just sort of like invest in that place, learn about that place. Also, I've had so many people tell me, oh, this is how you become a park ranger. It's sort of ironic because I'm a park ranger. when I tell them I'm a park ranger and they hear that I studied religious studies and anthropology, they're like, "Oh no, you're supposed to have a science degree." And it's like, well, I'm a park ranger, so I think a lot of people tell you what road you're supposed to take, but I think I know like the park ranger I work with has a fine arts degree. She did like sculpture, and then I know other people that studied science, and at least for what I do, like religious studies and anthropology, and dealing with how people relate to wilderness and how we relate to the land around us, and the fact that it is like the homeland to Native Alaskan people, I don't think it's not relevant. So, and I think each of us bring our different skills and different perspectives.
Yeah.
And hopefully, as we grow as an agency and as a country, we realize that all those differences that we come with, maybe not taking the same traditional paths, are really important and valued, because national parks, we say they protect not just our landscape, but our story as Americans. So you'll not just see like landscapes, you'll also see like historical sites, right? Like the Martin Luther King House, like that tells us about like who we are as Americans, hopefully. But in order to tell that story, we're an incredibly diverse country, not just landscape wise and biodiversity wise, just ethnically, like culturally. And so I think that hopefully the National Park Service will sort of like be able to incorporate more of that in the future. And so I think there are many ways to become a park ranger, but I also think it's important to not be a park ranger and still care about the environment. And so hopefully that answered your...
Yeah, that was perfect. I also just had... All right.
So actually, Aiden, if it's going... Yeah, Aiden asked me a question that I get a lot from a lot of different people. They asked if you're assigned to a location, like in the Army. And I said something about picking a location and whether you can just like pick anywhere. And so what ends up happening is when you first start out in the Park Service, you kind of apply to all the jobs you want. Mm-hmm. And then, sometimes you don't get them, but then sometimes you do. So, you might want to work at Glacier Bay, but it's hard to get maybe to Glacier Bay, or, people want to work at Yosemite or something, and maybe they don't end up working at Yosemite and they get a job at Great Basin, which is kind of what happened to me. I ended up at Great Basin just wanting to work for the Park Service. I didn't think much about it. And then I realized how awesome a place it was when I arrived. But you wouldn't be offered a job unless you applied for that job. So like, hopefully you wouldn't be applying for something you didn't want to go. Like if you didn't want to work at, the National Mall, then you
probably shouldn't apply.
You shouldn't apply. Some people do that to get their foot in the door or to get experience. But I think when I said find a place you care about, just because if you care about something, it doesn't matter whether you work for the Park Service or, I don't know, the state or Fish and Wildlife Service. Yeah. And I do find, at least in Alaska, it's like if you come up and study like whales in Southeast Alaska, for example, it's kind of a small group of people. A small niche. And so, I think people that really invest in a place tend to stay there and find ways to work there. So that's kind of what I meant. If your only goal is to work for the Park Service, then you can do what some people probably did in the resumes I'm looking at, which is just apply to everything under the sun and interview for everything under the sun and then see what happens. But I'd much prefer to get somebody that wants to be at that specific location and that wants to do that specific work.
Fun facts about the United States National Parks. The largest national park in the United States is Alaska's Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Preserve. The park covers a whopping 8,323,146 acres, while the preserve clocks in at about 4,852,645 acres. That's over 13 million acres in total. The most visited national park isn't Yosemite, Yellowstone, or even the Grand Canyon. In fact, it's Great Smoky Mountains National Park. In Sequoia National Park, you can drive through a fallen sequoia. When it fell in 1937, park rangers cut a tunnel through the log to attract visitors. Unfortunately, it's not so great if your vehicle's taller than 8 feet high. There are also over 400 national park sites. These are different from national parks, but they're still managed by the National Park Service. They can include battlefields, military parks, scenic trails, memorials, parkways, and other recreation areas. The state with the most national parks is California, which has a grand total of 9 national parks. Death Valley National Park has been the site of some of the hottest temperatures ever recorded on the planet. Kentucky's Mammoth Cave National Park is home to the longest known cave system in the world. The only United States national park named after a person is Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Why are national parks important? These beautiful, unspoiled landscapes are rich with flora and fauna you can't find anywhere else in the world. Many parks feature rock formations or geological deposits to astound and amaze. They're beloved by millions of respectful visitors every year who use the parks for recreation or learning.
The political and governmental side of the National Park Service involves its management under the U.S. Department of the Interior and its adherence to government policies and regulations. This aspect ensures the protection and preservation of the park's natural and cultural resources for future generations. On the social side, the NPS provides opportunities for recreation, education, and scientific research, allowing individuals and communities to connect with nature, learn about history, and appreciate the beauty of the parks. Personally, the NPS has had a profound impact on me and those around me. Through visits to the national parks, we have experienced unforgettable moments in nature, gained a deeper understanding of our country's heritage, and fostered a sense of environmental stewardship. The parks have provided us with a sanctuary for reflection, adventure, and personal growth, offering a respite for the stresses of everyday life and a chance to connect with loved ones. I personally love national parks, and it allows for me to have an escape from my day-to-day life, and it allows me to spend more time with my family and do the things I love with them. Overall, I want to thank everyone who helped make this documentary possible, such as Joseph Whalen, Brian Monroe, and myself, director AIDAN Munroe. I hope all of you enjoyed this documentary, and I hope you get to experience the national parks in their full effect.